today is going to be an educational day. All right. Jann Wenner, if that's how I say his name, Wenner, right? He just got kicked out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Round of applause, right? For his articulate racist remarks saying that women and black men, or shall I just say black artists, I think he actually specifically said black men, but more importantly, he said that women and black people were not articulate enough to be covered in his book called The Masters. Interesting title, right? First of all, why would you choose that title? He did an interview with New York Times, and I give credit to the journalist. He was actually kind of slamming him a little bit for that phrase. He has 7 white male rock stars that he covered for this book, okay? And I listen to all of this music, man, so I understand, but I believe that it's very important that we pay attention to this because I believe that this is the same thing that they are trying to do with hip hop. We all know that you want to say from your interview that these artists couldn't articulate what needed to be said for you to be able to cover an in-depth view of the history of rock and roll. Can we all take notice to understand where rock and roll came from? I mean, they finally depicted this in the Elvis Presley movie, right? Finally. It just took them forever to do it. But they finally said, okay, yeah, I guess we got to say that Elvis got his style from people of color, right? That's what they were trying to say in the movie. Can we all agree that I think widely acknowledged that Rocket 88 by Ike Turner was considered one of the first rock and roll songs? Can we also agree that even CNN, which I most of the time disagree with, even got it right to say that Little Richard is the founder of rock and roll? So you're going to go ahead and say that these black artists did not help shape rock and roll? I mean, isn't rock and roll a sex term that came from black people about, hey, baby, let's rock and roll? This is crazy, man. But you know what I think? I think that when people get to a certain age, they just have no filter. I think that's just what it is, man. He just is at a certain age where he just doesn't care. He's obviously showed his sexism and his racism through this New York Times interview. Let's listen to a little clip of it.
I mean, it's not that they're not creative geniuses. It's not that they're inarticulate, although go have a deep conversation with Grace Slick or Janice. Please be my guest. Or Cass Elliot, wonderful person. You know, Joni was not a philosopher of rock and roll. She didn't, in my mind, meet that test, not by her work, not by other interviews she did. The people I interviewed were the kind of philosophers of rock, of black artists. I mean, Stevie Wonder, incredibly, they're genius, right? These are genius artists. I mean, I suppose when you use a word as broad as the Masters, the fault is using that word, but maybe Marvin Gaye. I could cut Curtis Mayfield they just didn't articulate at that level,
Well, but how do you know if you didn't give him a chance to?
Because I read interviews with them. I listen to their music.
This is obviously just an old white man's opinion who's just outdated with the times. It's great to see that this is how he has always felt. Now I understand why the Rolling Stones greatest rap albums of all time, greatest hip hop artists of all time have always been trash lists. It makes perfect sense now. Okay, so we need to understand. I mean, as a matter of fact, I almost want to see the board next time that I see Rolling Stone put up a list of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. I want to see a list of that board who decided on that list. I want to see a list of that board who decided on those albums, because clearly this goes to show that nobody over there really understands the culture. I think even Michael Jackson went on to say that Rolling Stone does not credit black artists. They were probably so happy when Eminem came out and they were able to make this cover. It's such an interesting topic that he got now kicked out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Like, how long has this guy been on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I'm betting like years, right? That he's been on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And you're going to tell me that now you guys decided to kick him out? The question is how many other people on the board of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame really feel this way, but are smart enough to not probably go out there and speak their opinions? Now, I have heard some people say that, hey, you know what? The man is entitled to his opinion. Then go ahead and say that. But you can't say a magazine that you named after black artists, that was created from black artists, and then say that, hey, you know what? I don't want to acknowledge that part of the culture. He then goes on to say about Jimi Hendrix, how he was stoned out of his mind and that there was nothing substantial of the interview. I mean, it almost sounded like he just destroyed the whole Jimi Hendrix interview that he did. And I'm sure it was probably trash anyways, because he probably didn't understand anything. It was a newbie at the time, as he admitted. To say that Joni Mitchell and Stevie Nicks did not contribute. I mean, who doesn't like Fleetwood Mac? Joni Mitchell never lies. I mean, come on, man. Madonna. Are you serious? Like, this is crazy. We're not even going to get into rappers, because some people were saying, yeah, what about Ice-T and Snoop Dogg? We've had the pleasure of sitting down with Ice-T, and I can tell you that Ice-T is very articulate. But we already know that they ain't trying to have rap music. As a matter of fact, let's go to Wikipedia real quick, because when I hear stories like this, the first thing I want to do is see, where do these people come from? And just as I imagined, guess what? When he grew up as a young kid, he grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in a secular Jewish family. That right there tells us a lot right now. Oh, so you grew up in San Francisco, right? He goes on to have just, what probably a normal kid would have growing up over there. But then this is the interesting part. In 1967, after he got a job working at some local magazine newspaper, in 1967, him and his mentor went to go start Rolling Stone magazine in San Francisco. This is the interesting part, that he was able to get $7,500 from his family and from his girlfriend, who later on became his wife at the time. Now, do you guys understand what $7,000 was around in 1967, the buying power that it had? Well, I like to do something called the inflation calculator, where it was about $70,000 at that time. So imagine being able to raise nearly $100,000 right now to be able to go start your business. That shows right there that you must come from money, and you have friends that have money. Good for you, man. Good for you. But again, this to me sounds like another spoiled kid who just got everything from rich parents that he had and rich friends and family, because growing up in San Francisco, you got to have money to grow up in San Francisco. It's not one of the poorest cities in the world, that's for damn sure. He's able to go start this publication, right? And he probably always had in his mind that this is what he wanted to have. This is what he wanted to cover. This is the music that he wanted to cover. Hey, great, man. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I personally don't listen to Sexy Red and Suki. I don't listen to that rap. So I understand that, of course, is not going to go on our list of the greatest female rappers, even though everybody right now is saying Sexy Red, she's doing it. She's doing it. I beg to differ. The other interesting part about this is that it said that Rolling Stone took a hit. Let me go pull that part up real quick. In 1977, Rolling Stone shifted its base from operations from San Francisco to New York. The magazine circulation dipped briefly in the late 1970s and early 80s as Rolling Stone responded slowly in covering the emergence of punk rock, and again in the 1990s when it lost ground to Spin magazine and Blender in coverage of hip hop. There you have it. So Rolling Stone, just like MTV, did not want to cover hip hop. They actually considered hip hop not to be real music. That's why I thought it was so funny when I saw the VMAs celebrating hip hop 50. Like, come on, man. Y'all never celebrated hip hop. It wasn't until you just couldn't help it anymore because it just took over the mainstream, because the kids wanted to listen to hip hop. They got tired of rock and roll. They got tired of seeing the same bands. And just like what happened to rock and roll is actually happening to rap music right now, where Peter Townsend, who I think is a member of The Who. Yeah, I love The Who, man. I love the Rolling Stones. I love the Beatles. I mean, who doesn't like this music, man, right? But it's just, I mean, the Rolling Stones, come on, man. Like, Mick Jagger was a big part of this book from what I'm hearing. And it's like, I never really got anything from the Rolling Stones, man. I always thought that the Rolling Stones were just party music. You know, I mean, Mick Jagger got so much soul. He's definitely one of those guys. He's definitely one of those white guys that just got a lot of soul. We can't deny that. Everybody loves Mick Jagger. Everybody loves the Rolling Stones, right? But do I really think that their music was thought-provoking music? No, not really. And so Peter Townsend from The Who basically went on to say, okay, rock and roll started as a movement, even though we all know that it really came from blues. It's an electrical version of blues, right? But Peter Townsend goes on to say that, rock and roll was really big, especially during the Vietnam War. A lot of people were using it to protest. Of course, we all know about Woodstock. I mean, that's where a lot of these festivals like Coachella and Rolling Loud take after. They take after Woodstock. And it's like, he said that the music was really about social justice and really about creating a movement, kind of like how hip hop started, right? But then he said that once it became mainstream and it became successful and money was involved and people were getting famous from it, it lost the credibility of being about social justice, and then it went on to just be about making money. Sounds a lot like rap music, right, y'all? Sounds a lot like what they're doing about rap music. I mean, didn't rap music start off being about what was going on in the communities, as we always say, what was going on in the hood? And people were reporting what was going on in New York. We were reporting what was going on over in Atlanta. People was reporting what was going on in LA. People was reporting what was going on in Texas. People was reporting what was going on in Chicago. I mean, it was like the news for what was going on in the streets. And then all of a sudden, the record industry said, hey, we can make some money off of this. I find it really interesting that Rolling Stone did not want to cover rap music until they had to. And just a side note, we're going to say that you can't talk to Stevie Wonder? I mean, come on, yo. Wasn't Stevie Wonder cleaning up the Grammys in the 70s? Oh, let's not get into the Grammys with the whole AI thing. That's going to be a whole nother subject. I'm going to do a video on that one, but that'll be another video. He said, who do you think you could have me interview today who could articulate? I would say Stevie Wonder. Definitely Stevie Wonder. Who else? Quincy Jones, maybe, just because he worked with Michael Jackson on Thriller. This explains to me why Tribe Called Quest has yet to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Somebody else had said this, and I think that after this story has come out, I think that it's now time that us rappers, us that are part of the hip hop community, that we no longer try to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and we need to create our own Hall of Fame, which will be the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. That should be our own Hall of Fame that we will create. But I know that probably later on it will get jaded, and then you guys will start letting artists like Cardi B and Sexy Red into the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. So maybe we shouldn't do that. But yeah, it pretty much explains to me why they are so far behind with the times, why their interns do not seem to know how to make good lists. And this answers the question. But yeah, I think that you guys need to do a little bit more research. Yeah, man. That's it, man.